He wasn't just a man, he was a storm brewing in the backyards of Miami. Fists like iron, heart like a warrior forged in the fires of struggle. Before arenas, before pay-per-views and screaming fans, there was just Kimbo. A bare-knuckle brawler carving his legacy one punch at a time, with nothing but grit and an unshakable belief that he was born to fight. While others looked for comfort, he chased pain. He found home in the chaos of fists and blood, rising not from a training camp, but from the streets, where every blow carried the weight of survival, not just sport. He didn't need gloves to make a name. All he needed was a backyard, a camera, and a reason. With each thundering punch, Kimbo wasn't just fighting his opponents. He was fighting every doubt, every setback, every system that said he wasn't enough. And when those fists landed, the world took notice. Viral before viral was even a thing, he was the internet's underground king, a symbol of raw, unfiltered power. No sponsors, no hype, just sweat, knuckles, and street-born fearlessness. He didn't ask for attention, he earned it, one brutal knockout at a time. But behind those fearsome eyes was a man who had seen it all. Homelessness, humiliation, and hunger. Born Kevin Ferguson, he wore the scars of his past like armor. He'd been down and out, worked as a strip club bouncer, and even lived in his car. Life never handed him anything, it only handed him reasons to fight harder. While others talked about chasing dreams, Kimbo chased survival. His fists were not only weapons, but tools. Instruments to claw his way out of the gutter and into the spotlight, fueled by hardship and unshakable will. What made Kimbo terrifying wasn't just the power, it was the calm. He'd stare his opponent down with a stillness that spoke louder than any threat. That calm wasn't confidence, it was cold reality. He had already fought the real fights in life. A punch to the jaw? That was nothing compared to sleeping in the back of a car or going hungry for days. When he stepped into a fight, he didn't just bring power, he brought pain, trauma, and years of bottled-up fury. Every knockout was a release of struggle, of defiance, of triumph. He rose from internet fame into the professional cage, but the critics were relentless. They said he wasn't a real fighter, just a street thug with a beard and a right hand. They underestimated the fire in his chest, the hours of silent training, and the mountain of pressure he carried. Kimbo didn't grow in elite gyms, he grew in survival. He didn't wear championship belts, he wore the streets on his shoulders. He wasn't polished, he was primal. And that's exactly what made him dangerous. Because real fear doesn't come from technique, it comes from truth. When Elite XC came calling, the underground warrior suddenly had a stage. The gloves were on, the lights were bright, and the world was watching. And in his first televised fight, Kimbo didn't just win, he dominated. He turned skeptics into believers, one bone-crunching punch at a time. But with fame came critics, haters, and vultures. They circled every mistake, magnified every flaw, waiting for him to fall. Because Kimbo wasn't part of the system, he was a rebel in a world of rules. And the system never liked rebels. It feared them. It tried to break them. Then came the night that nearly broke him. A last-minute opponent, Seth Petruzelli, stepped in when Shamrock pulled out. The fight lasted 14 seconds. Kimbo was caught, dropped, and the internet exploded, not in support, but in mockery. The fall was faster than the rise. Commentators labeled him a fraud. They said the backyard brawler was exposed, that the myth had crumbled under the weight of real MMA. But what they didn't see was that Kimbo had never been a myth. He was a man. And real men don't disappear when they're down. They rise. With his reputation in ruins, Kimbo did something unexpected. He went silent. No trash talk, no excuses, just silence and work. While critics mocked, he trained. He knew that greatness isn't built in the spotlight, it's built in the shadows, in silence, with sweat. And then, quietly, he re-emerged, not on a YouTube screen, but in Dana White's Ultimate Fighter house. They said he wouldn't survive. They laughed. But Kimbo wasn't there to entertain anymore. He was there to earn. Every jab, every sprawl, every takedown, he was learning, evolving, transforming pain into purpose. His time in the UFC was short but symbolic. He didn't win a belt. He didn't climb to the top of the rankings. But he won something more valuable: respect. Not just from fans, but from fighters who once doubted him. They saw the heart, the humility, the hunger. Kimbo wasn't chasing fame anymore, but he was chasing redemption. And in a sport where most chase glory, he chased honor. He didn't try to be perfect, he tried to be better. And that's what made him a legend. Not for the knockouts, but for the journey between them. And just when the world thought they had seen the last of him, Kimbo entered the cage again. Older, slower, but still dangerous. He wasn't fighting for fame. He was fighting for legacy. Every time he stepped into that cage, he was writing a story, not with words, but with war. It wasn't about titles or money. It was about proving that a man from nothing could become something, that the streets could produce not just brawlers, but warriors. Kimbo fought not just for himself, but for everyone who had ever been doubted, discarded, or forgotten. His comeback was chaotic, bloody, and imperfect. And that's exactly why it mattered. In an era where fighters are shaped in marketing rooms, Kimbo remained raw, a relic of unfiltered combat. He didn't move like a champion, but he struck like a freight train. When Bellator welcomed him, critics scoffed, but the fans roared. Because when Kimbo stepped into the cage, you weren't watching technique, you were witnessing tension, fire, and survival wrapped in human form. His fight with Dada 5000 was ugly, a slow-motion war of exhaustion. But even in that, there was beauty. Two titans, broken but unyielding. It wasn't about clean punches or slick grappling. It was about will. Two men from the same streets, swinging not for points but for pride. The fight wasn't technical, but it was primal. And primal is what made Kimbo iconic. He never claimed to be the best, only the realest. And in that cage, the reality was raw. Aging bodies, aching lungs, shattered egos. But still, they fought. Because Kimbo's story was never about perfection. It was about defiance. About a man daring to rise in a world that begged him to stay down. That's why fans never left him. Outside the cage, he was gentle, humble, even soft-spoken. A father, a mentor, a man who never let fame erode his soul. To those who met him, he wasn't Kimbo the Beast. He was Kevin the Human. His teammates remember him not for his power, but for his patience. His children saw a provider, a protector. The streets had forged him hard, but they never stole his heart. That contrast, the savage in the ring and the saint outside it, made him unforgettable. He was complex, layered, real. A man of war shaped by love and pain alike. He gave voice to the voiceless, showed the world that even those who rise from nothing can shake the earth. He didn't come from gold medal wrestling programs or Olympic boxing teams. He came from scraps, bruises, and survival instinct. Yet he reached stages where millions watched. Kimbo taught the fight world a lesson it had forgotten. That heart matters more than hype. That hunger can outshine polish. And that legends aren't always built in gyms. Sometimes they're built in silence, in alleyways, and in pain. He carved a legacy not with words, but with war. And the world remembered. But beneath the legacy was a body paying the price. The years of punishment, both given and taken, caught up. Behind the beard, the muscles, the bravado, his heart was struggling. On June 6, 2016, the Warrior's heart gave out, just 42 years old. The news shocked the MMA world, not just because it came suddenly, but because it felt unfair. Kimbo had more to give, more to teach, more to fight for. Fans didn't just mourn a fighter, they mourned a symbol of grit, resilience, and the unbreakable human spirit. His death wasn't the end of a fighter's life. It was the beginning of a legend's echo. The streets that once doubted him now whispered his name with reverence. Young fighters wore his image. His highlight reels flooded the internet again, this time not with mockery, but with mourning. Because whether you loved him or not, you couldn't ignore him. Kimbo had become immortal in the minds of millions, a walking contradiction who defied every rule and still walked tall. He proved that fighting wasn't about perfection. It was about presence. And his presence still haunts the sport. Even now, years after his last fight, Kimbo remains a measuring stick for authenticity. In a sport filled with carefully crafted personas, his rawness stands as a reminder of what fighting really means. You can train in luxury, wear the best gear, and talk all the trash you want. But when the cage door shuts, it's your soul that fights. Kimbo fought with his soul every time. And that soul, battered and bruised, still inspires those who find themselves on the outside of the system, clawing for a way in. Because if Kimbo could make it, maybe they can too. His legacy doesn't lie in stats or win-loss records. It lives in the fire he lit in the hearts of the underdogs. He wasn't just a fighter, he was a revolution wrapped in muscle and scars. He didn't just brawl, he broadcasted the struggle of a generation that grew up fighting invisible battles,